Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Reyna Montoya. I am the founder and CEO at Aliento, a nonprofit organization dedicated to support mixed immigration status communities and dreamers. I am here today to discuss deeply concerning implications on the proposed measure. I have lived in Arizona for over 20 years in my community. I'm a proud alumni from Arizona State University, Grand Canyon University, and Harvard University. I am also a beneficiary of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, and I really wanted to share a little bit of the impact and potential unintended consequences. There are 144,000 U.S. citizen children under the age of 18 that live with at least one undocumented parent. So when we think about policies like that, we need to think about those U.S. citizen children that might be impacted by this. I want to speak specifically on the merits of Section 5, Title 13, Article 35, where the proposed legislation really talks about entering Arizona at any location other than a lawful port of entry be deemed unlawful. So such a provision fails to recognize the complex realities of immigration. Consider for a moment, how would you determine the port of entry of Arizona? Would you assume lawful port of based on my attire, my fluency of English? Would you do it based on other appearances? What are the basis of you having probable cause to then inquire if I enter through what port of entry and if I did it legally or not? These types of judgments is what HCR2060 could compel state officials to make. Many people like myself enter with a visa legally through a port of entry, later transition into different immigration statuses. This bill does not just target those with irregular entry methods. It impacts anyone who might seek asylum like my father did, who escaped violence and was kidnapped by Mexican police. Despite eventually winning his asylum case under a judge, an expensive and lengthy process, and his initial entry was crucial for my family's safety. Another thing that is important to understand is that supporters from HCR 2060 argue that it's necessary for border security. However, this measure fails to address the multifaceted causes of migration and instead targets vulnerable populations. It is an underfunded mandate. It also creates punitive actions that risk separating families with discarding practical and common sense solutions, such as allocating funds to improve border technology, infrastructure, and screening processes. Another concern is Section 5, 1342-9503, Order to Return to the Foreign Nation. HCR 2060 threatens Arizona's economic interests and also the relationships with Mexico. According to the Arizona Commerce Authority, Mexico is Arizona's top trading partner, with an $8 billion in exports and $11.8 billion in imports from 2023. Provisions similar to HCR 2060 have faced already legal challenges and criticisms undermining bilateral trade migration frameworks, as noted by Mexico's amicus brief under the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals concerning the Texas Senate Bill 4. So when we think about these specific provisions, this has also been litigated under the U.S. Supreme Court under Arizona versus U.S. 567, U.S. 387. Decisions regarding removal, touch on foreign relationships, must be made by one voice, in this case, the federal government. So I think it is really important for us to be aware of those unintended consequences that we're putting not only citizens, but also law enforcement to make discretion and make recommendations when they haven't have the capacity to do so. Well, we all agree that America's immigration system is not only outdated and inefficient, our efforts to reform it must recognize the humanity of all individuals. HCR 2060 does not effectively secure our borders, but rather divides our communities, undermines our values, and violates fundamental asylum principles. I urge Arizona legislators to vote no on HCR 2060 and encourage our federal officials to pursue balanced solutions that include border security measures and a pathway to citizenship for immigrants who have long contributed to our society. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Montoya. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Montoya, I'd like to ask you questions in regards to your mixed status family, in regards to your experiences and your family's experiences in regards to prior laws that were on the books, and and I guess your interpretation of what could occur if this HCR is passed by the voters.
Ms. Montoya?
Thank you so much, Chairman, Senator. Thank you so much for your question. I grew up with a mixed immigration status family. I am a DACA recipient as of now. My little sister is now 16, who is a U.S. citizen, and I also have another DACA recipient brother. Both of my parents now have been able to adjust their immigration status and are on their way to receiving their legal permanent status here in the United States. The reality is that the psychological burden that this occurs, it's tremendous. This would make low-income communities, such as families like mine at that time, that my mom would be so worried to seek any type of benefits for my little sister, who is a U.S. citizen, who has those opportunities to do that, because of being questioned. What would that look like when they're asking? The truth of the matter is that in order to understand and enforce potential solutions like this, it's unenforceable unless people start inquiring specifically, where did you enter to the United States? Are we asking then hospitals, school sites, to be inquiring these questions around where did you enter to the United States? Based on the way that this legislation is written, it's too vague. It doesn't confine like SB4. SB4 has confinements around schools, hospitals. This current HCR2060 doesn't have those parameters.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Montoya, as a leader in Aliento, I'd like to ask you in regards to what you're hearing from the people that are actually involved and the people that the members of Aliento are communicating with.
A lot of the
Montoya.
fears, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Ms. Senator, a lot of the concerns that we are hearing from our students are that they've been living here most of their lives. The average age of a dreamer is the age of 6 when they enter into the United States. Many of them don't even have that memory about how they enter, what port of entry they entered, and they're just really worried that they're going to be targeted, because unfortunately that has been our reality. It is not something easy. Every time that I have those conversations, there's a lot of tears. There's a lot of cracking voice and even sweaty hands about thinking and reminiscing what we had to experience. Even me as a young person, I grew up in Mesa. Mesa is home. And I remember in around 2011 that there was a case of a woman who went to seek emergency care at Banner by the 60 and Southern. And at that time, she was inquired for her immigration status, something that she was unable to provide, and she was deported from the bed of the hospital. These are the stories that my students remember. And these are the stories of the students who are also U.S. citizens, are worried about their parents and how that's going to have an impact, not only of their livelihood, but their ability to pursue an education and to continue to be self-reliant and good members of Arizona and our society.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question, if I
Yes.
may. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Montoya, if the voters do pass this, and if it happens to get onto the ballot, which I hope not, I would like to hear your thoughts on the consequences of long-term effects if this was to put into law.
Ms.
Mr.
Montoya.
Chairman, Ms. Senator, some of the unintended consequences have been well documented. There are higher levels of anxiety, stress, and PTSD within the immigrant community, within U.S. citizen children of undocumented parents. Research after research shows that this impact has tremendous impacts not only on their well-being, but in whole societies. We are not giving an opportunity, a fair shot to 140,000 U.S. citizen children to live in peace, to be able to go to school and focus in their academics. Children at the age of 8, children at the age of 10 should be worried about their math tests, should be worried about doing best in school. They shouldn't be worried about driving to school and thinking that if mom is not making 5 full Mississippis on a stop sign, because that's what I do. I count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippis, 3 Mississippis, 4 Mississippis, 5 Mississippis. that's how we have been trained to ensure that we're not violating anything, to ensure that that cannot lead to family separation. And those are the real ramifications that our young kids are having to worry about, where no 5-year-old should be worrying about that when they're driving to school.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
real quick.
Representative Dunn.
Thank you for being here. Of the people that are coming through the desert, the people we're talking about, this bill research, talks about the ones that are not coming through the ports of entry. Of all those ones that the CBP is getting, how many of those are from Mexico?
Ms. Montoya.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Dunn, here in the state of Arizona, there's approximately 80% that are from Mexico.
That's not my question.
Yes, Senator.
This bill
Representative.
addresses people that are coming through the desert, coming not through the port of entries, the ones that the sheriffs would then be able to apprehend. Those people that are, you see on the TV, that are down in Eagle Pass, that are coming through Yuma, what percentage of those people are coming from Mexico? I mean, they're coming from Mexico, but what are of Mexican descent or Mexican heritage?
Representative, I
Ms.
do not
Montoya.
know the, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Representative Dunn, I do not know the exact answer to your question of the current apprehensions at that moment. What I do know is that HCR2060, the way that is created and about the removal provisions, and the way that is created around no geographical bounds on asking questions around port of entry, that's my biggest concern, because the students that I get to work with, the families that I get to work here, have been long-term residents of the United States, have been contributing, and then it opens the door because the language is so vague that it's not only treating about, as you mentioned, the folks that are coming right now at this moment. It opens the door because of the vagueness and the lack of clarity in the current language to potentially target my family.
Mr. Chair, last comment.
Yes, sir.
And for the public to listen is the reason we don't. She doesn't. I mean, I appreciate you not knowing the answer to that, because there's very few asylum seekers that have come from Mexico that are approved. Mexico residents are sent back automatically by CBP. They're not allowed to get into the asylum system. They have to really prove a point. So these are from the other 170 countries that are coming through here. This is who we're targeting. We're not targeting Mexican citizens. We're not targeting people that are here inside the states already. This is for those people that are coming across from 170 countries that want to do harm to our country. That's what it's about.
Mr. Chairman and Representative
ma'am.
Dunn, if I may, I completely understand where you are coming from. However, based on the language, the way that it's created, it opens the question about how are police, local, state, sheriffs that were present today, thank you for your service, how are they going to be asking and inquiring questions about port of entry? Are they, again, if that's the case, what are the geography bounds? Why is it not written in the current language? Because right now, people are really scared and they have a legitimate case of being afraid because it's not explicit, and we have seen it by precedent in Arizona, and that's the reason why there was the Melendres case. That's the reason why we have been under so much litigation, and it has been so unfair for Arizona taxpayers that we have to bear the cost of all these lawsuits.